Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're setting aside the usual metrics for a bit markets, politics, tech disruptions. And we're diving straight into, well, the psychological bedrock of civilization itself.
Right. Deep stuff.
We're exploring a theory. It's pretty intense, quite provocative, actually. It challenges the very idea of modern freedom.
Which is?
The systematic and, I think, sophisticated repression of female eros, vital desire in our contemporary culture.
Okay, so this is a deep dive into the real cost of keeping things orderly.
Exactly.
We're looking at this claim, this idea that what feels like empowerment, especially around sexuality,
Yeah.
might actually be, if you look at it through a Freudian lens, just the newest, most tightly controlled cage we've built yet.
The tools just got better, maybe? More personal?
More personalized, more persuasive, absolutely.
Okay, let's start with something concrete, something we see, literally every day. You scroll through any platform, right?
Right.
And you see these declarations, these confident statements. I don't owe you my sexuality.
Yep, very common. Very necessary, too.
Vital statement. Boundary, self-ownership, agency, gets applause everywhere.
And it absolutely should be applauded. Let's be clear. Consent, boundaries, respect, these are just non-negotiable human rights.
Right,
period.
no question.
But what's fascinating here, what we kind of have to investigate based on this line of thought, is the central tension. Is this necessary righteous cry, I don't know you? Is it really liberation? Or is it maybe just the terms of surrender to a new kind of cultural management?
I think that's disruptive because it makes us rethink what repression even is.
How so?
Well, repression as a psychic thing, it isn't always obvious, Not always violent or simple, doesn't need chains or fire and brimstone.
Right.
Freud got this. The most effective repression, it's internalized, it's invisible, and often, crucially, it feels voluntary.
It wears velvet gloves, as the saying goes.
Yeah, exactly. It smiles while it lays down the rules for how and when and who you're allowed to desire.
Okay, this is where we need to be super precise with our terms, though. Because morality language can really muddy the waters here.
Sure.
We have to separate setting healthy boundaries, that's the ego, protecting the self from the actual nature of, well, desire itself.
Two different things.
Totally different. The right to say no. Sacrosanct. Absolutely fundamental.
Agreed.
But the impulse to want, that's a different beast entirely, isn't it?
Desire authentic Eros. It's anarchic, doesn't follow rules, doesn't fill out a survey.
Doesn't ask permission.
Right, or negotiate terms, or care about your political affiliation. It's about merging, disrupting, dissolving boundaries. It's about surrender, chaos. It's the id, really, before the ego steps in.
And precisely that chaos, is what any culture built on order, hierarchy, property lineage simply cannot stand.
Too destabilizing.
Way too destabilizing. So our mission today, I guess, is to trace how control evolves. Why does culture fear this raw desire?
Yeah.
And how has that inner voice of authority of the Freudian superego, how has it just changed its clothes? From the priest to the king.
To the algorithm, maybe, the self-help guru.
Exactly. The uniform changes, but the underlying function maybe stays the same.
Okay, let's unpack this core paradox then. Self-ownership versus something else. If we accept this Freudian idea that real Eros is fundamentally anarchic,
Right, chaotic.
then its main threat isn't that it's immoral, right? It's that it's uncontrollable.
Exactly. Think about what desire does. It seeks merger, dissolution of self, even if just for a moment. If desire were neat and orderly, civilization wouldn't care.
But it's not.
No. It pushes the individual towards losing strategic control, towards surrender. And that's a direct existential threat to the kind of rational, productive subject that civilization needs us to be.
And this clash, it's not just abstract theory, it's felt. It's like an experiential thing, played out in private moments of self-judgment.
Oh, absolutely. The source material talks about that specific moment, right? Yeah. When the heat of genuine wanting first bumps up against the cold hand of shame, often invisible shame.
Yeah, think about those small intrusions, the ones that build up the psychic structure over time. Like what?
Maybe she's, 13? Sitting in a way that feels natural, relaxed, maybe even a little sensual. And her mother, the first agent of culture, really says, don't sit like that.
Oh, yeah. Heard that one.
The message isn't really about posture, is it? It's about containment. Keep it in.
Or later, maybe during a really intense kiss, she feels this surge of pleasure, like real vitality.
Yeah, overwhelming maybe.
Right, overwhelming. And then that little internal voice, the superego starting to form, whispers, good girls don't like it that much.
That much pleasure means you're out of control.
Precisely. Or fast forward, maybe she's 22. Modern context.
Okay.
She has a sexual encounter. Consensual, enjoyed it, feels good, satisfied.
Right.
Then she picks up her phone, scrolls social media, sees the dominant chatter,
Oh boy.
and boom, a wave of guilt washes over her.
Guilt for what, though?
Guilt for liking it too much, maybe? Or guilt for wanting a guy who might be, ideologically problematic according to the current discourse. Or just guilt for feeling vulnerable instead of powerful in that moment.
Exactly. No one is standing over her saying, "You're bad." But instantly, she's caged by her own self-judgment, comparing her messy feelings to the curated narratives online.
That's repression in its purest Freudian form, isn't it?
Textbook.
Yeah.
It's internalized, invisible, and feels voluntary. She becomes her own jailer.
Policing her own feelings.
Right, policing the boundaries of what she's allowed to feel, because culture hammered home this lesson. Your desire is dangerous.
And not just dangerous because it might hurt you.
No, crucially, dangerous because its raw, untamed nature might destabilize her curated, acceptable self, and by extension, the whole social structure that needs her to be predictable.
Which brings us right to Freud's big argument, civilization and its discontents.
The thin crust over the cauldron of chaos.
Exactly. Civilization is built, he argues, on taming or sublimating our primal drives. Eros, the life urge, Thanatos, the death urge.
We take that raw energy and redirect it.
Right. Lust becomes art, aggression becomes law or competition.
But, and this is critical, we can't miss the gendered part of this. The pressure to sublimate. It's not applied equally.
How so?
Well, take male aggression. It gets channeled into things society often values, even glorifies. Competition, conquest, leadership, building empires.
Yeah, productive roles.
Highly productive.
Yeah.
And male sexuality. It's redirected too,
Yeah.
into lineage, property, marriage, work. It's tolerated, even encouraged, as long as it's controlled and serves the structure of inheritance.
Okay, so male drives get channeled, but female sexuality.
The argument here is that historically, the aim wasn't just to redirect it, it was to erase it, or at least contain it so thoroughly it barely registers.
Why? Because it resists ownership?
That seems to be the core of it, the link between desire and property.
Explain that.
Male desire, when channeled through approved structures like marriage, fits neatly into the logic of capital, legacy. It secures paternity, guarantees inheritance, it builds dynasties.
Right. Clear lines.
But female desire, if it's truly free and untamed, well, it throws a wrench into that whole system. If a woman desires freely outside those controlled channels, paternity becomes uncertain,
And the whole structure built on bloodlines and property.
threatens to wobble or even crumble.
And that's why, historically, it got pathologized so quickly.
Seems likely. Religious institutions called it sin.
Philosophers called it irrational.
Early science called it hysterical. It was always too much, not too loud necessarily, but too unmanageable, too threatening to the system of ownership and predictability that ordered society relied on.
So, to handle this threat, culture built up defenses,
Yeah.
layers of containment.
Exactly. The material we're looking at outlines 4 historical layers. It shows how the system got more sophisticated over time.
Okay, layer 1. Simple, ancient, shame.
You're dirty for wanting. The basic moral taboo.
Layer 2, more internal, guilt.
You're selfish for enjoying it. Feeling pleasure might disrupt the family, the community, the order. It's the cost of breaking ranks.
Layer 3, fear, social consequences.
Right. You'll be punished, excluded, ridiculed, called names, slut, crazy, desperate, social weapons to keep people in line.
And for centuries, those 3 were probably enough, right? Kept most desire locked down.
Largely,
Yeah.
yeah. But layer 4, that's the modern twist, the rebranding, modern repression.
How does that work?
It works through conditional permission. It says, sure, you can be sexual, you're empowered, but
There's always a but.
always, only if that sexuality is under total, strategic, visible control. It has to be performed as resistance, or as a political statement, or as self-care. Never just authentic, messy, unstrategic surrender.
Wow. That creates the perfect trap, doesn't it? Self-policing.
Totally. So even when a woman says yes, she feels this pressure to add a disclaimer. I chose this. I'm in charge. This is for me. She has to constantly signal her agency.
But what if? What if desire itself is fundamentally anti-agency, in a way? What if desire wants to choose her?
That's the radical question, isn't it?
What if the most dangerous act isn't saying yes or no, but allowing desire to actually take control for a moment? That genuine, unscripted dissolving of the self.
If that's the case, then this modern demand for constant, visible control, It's just the superego wearing a feminist t-shirt, maybe?
Making sure the inhaled stays firmly on the leash, even during what looks like liberation.
It's a profound shift. The system doesn't say you can't have sex. It says you can only have sex in a way that reinforces your identity as a rational, autonomous, fully controlled subject. No chaos allowed.
Okay, if this threat from female Eros is structural, tied to the foundations of civilization, we need to look at the psychic origins of that control, which for Freud starts with guilt.
Right, back to totem and taboo, that controversial origin myth, the primal crime.
The sons killing the primal father who had all the women.
Yep. And then immediately after, they're hit with overwhelming guilt and, crucially, fear of the chaos they've unleashed among themselves.
So to contain that chaos, manage their own drive's aggression, desire to create taboos.
Exactly. The father becomes sacred, the totem. And the mother, the object of their original desire, becomes forbidden.
So civilization, in this rather bleak model, isn't born from love or cooperation.
No. It's born from murder, guilt, and the need for psychosocial order imposed because of that guilt.
And the woman's role in this new structure.
She becomes the object, the prize, the forbidden thing, the reason for the taboo in the first place. Her sexuality is the dangerous energy that must be contained to keep the new hierarchy stable.
Which explains why that internalized voice of, no, the superego never really went away.
It just got better camouflage. Master of disguise.
It moved from the priest
to the king.
And now, the therapist, the algorithm, the woke slogan, the influencer selling empowerment.
All potential new costumes. The uniform changes dramatically, right? From robes to athleisure.
Right. But the underlying role, it seems eerily consistent across thousands of years.
Yep.
The woman isn't really allowed to just want, unless that wanting is safely contained or justified by some external framework, or, most importantly, serves the structure of control itself.
So let's break down how those new costumes work as prohibitions. Take the algorithm.
Okay.
It acts like a superego
Yeah.
by constantly defining what's successful, what's desirable, what gets rewarded with visibility. If your expression of sexuality is too messy, too vulnerable, too real.
Or just violates the unspoken community guidelines of the dominant online group.
Right. The algorithm punishes you. Shadow ban, less engagement, invisibility. It uses social exclusion, the modern version of being shunned, to enforce conformity to the acceptable script.
And political slogans or even feminist theory when they get co-opted by this internal judge.
Same function, potentially. They offer an ideological framework dictating correct desire. If what you feel doesn't fit the approved narrative, maybe it's not high agency enough or not sufficiently trauma-informed,
then the internal voice kicks in. That feeling is regressive. You're unhealed, therefore you are bad.
it's intellectualized self-flagellation. Shame dressed up as critical theory.
Okay, this brings us back to that distinction you made. Sublimation versus domestication.
Right. Sublimation, in Freud's sense, is supposed to be true alchemy, transforming raw impulse into something higher, culturally valued.
Lust becomes poetry. Aggression becomes fair governance or competitive sport.
Exactly. But the question is, what does female Eros really get sublimated into? Is it genuine sublimation?
Or is it, as this thinking suggests, more often domestication?
The leash disguised as a pretty ribbon.
Yeah. Where the energy is redirected, sure, but into channels that just reinforce the existing power structure, rather than truly transforming anything.
We can see this historically. Think ancient Sparta.
Okay.
Female Eros was basically domesticated entirely into military function. The body's energy channeled solely into producing strong sons for the state. That was its value.
Or medieval convents.
Erotic longing wasn't denied exactly, but redirected completely into mystical devotion. Marrying Christ.
The desire is there, but its object is made sacred, untouchable, structurally safe, no threat to lineage.
Yeah, exactly. Then the Victorian era. Repression so intense, desire twists itself into illness. Hysteria.
The body screaming what the mind couldn't say.
The energy, Eros, had nowhere to go, so it imploded into paralysis, fainting, neuroses.
And the 1950s, the housewife ideal.
Energy successfully domesticated into hyperconsumerism, obsessive cleanliness, perfect homemaking.
The desire for intensity channeled into buying the right vacuum cleaner.
Or keeping the perfect lawn, often helped along by actual tranquilizers for the underlying frigidity or anxiety, which was really just repressed life force.
So what's the modern version, the modern sublimation?
This perspective argues it's the most insidious yet because it looks so much like freedom.
How so?
Female Eros today is primarily converted into identity, into personal branding. into resistance as aesthetic.
So the desire for powerful self-expression isn't necessarily channeled into, say, groundbreaking art that challenges the system.
Not always. Often, it's channeled into crafting a meticulous online persona, performing liberation for the algorithm and the digital tribe.
Selling your unfiltered truth, but in a highly filtered frame.
Exactly. The core energy is still rigidly controlled, but now by the need for likes, follows, validation within a specific ideological niche. The aesthetic of rebellion is packaged and sold back to you.
She says, I don't perform for men, while maybe performing an even more stylized version of sexuality for her thousands of followers, checking the engagement metrics.
Which function as the new moral or success scorecard.
This gets to that idea of culture not just repressing desire, but colonizing it.
Right. It's not a blanket no anymore. It's conditional belonging. It's yes, but.
The superego isn't just a judge, it's a meticulous editor now.
It scripts rather than silences. Yes, you can be sexual.
But only if you're totally in control of the story.
Only if you want the right things, politically speaking.
Only if it's trauma-informed and demonstrates healthy boundaries at all times.
And this is where the new taboos emerge, the unspoken ones.
Like what?
What happens if a woman finds herself wanting the quote-unquote wrong man? Someone who doesn't tick the boxes of ideological purity.
Or what if she has fantasies about surrender? Or even, God forbid, enjoys a feeling of being momentarily overpowered, not trauma, but ecstasy, a release from the burden of constant control.
The modern superego jumps right in, doesn't it? Whispering, that's regressive. You're not healed. You've internalized the patriarchy.
So she silences that impulse herself instantly, but now she justifies it with ideology or pop psychology.
The shame isn't I'm dirty, it's I'm ideologically incorrect or emotionally immature.
Which is, when you think about it, kind of the genius of modern repression.
How so?
The control is outsourced to the discourse itself. The superego gets its marching orders not from Dad or the Pope, but from community guidelines, that viral think piece, the healthy boundaries industrial complex.
They offer support, community, belonging. But it's conditional.
We support you, as long as you want what we've decided is acceptable to want.
You trade inner psychological complexity, maybe even freedom, for conditional social acceptance. You learn to trim your desires to fit the approved mold.
Reducing the vast, messy landscape of eroticism down to a consent checklist and a list of potential triggers, sanitizing the vitality out of it.
It feels like the institutionalization of repression, in a way. Eros, that wildlife force.
Ends up dressed in yoga pants, sipping matcha, reciting affirmations about boundaries.
While the authentic impulse to merge, to disrupt, to feel intensely is just slowly, quietly dying inside from lack of air. And the cost of this managed, sanitized desire, it's not just philosophical, it's real. When a woman allows this core life force, Eros, to be choked off or overly managed, she effectively makes a kind of pact with Thanatos.
The death drive.
Right, the urge towards dissolution, towards non-being. Not necessarily literal death, but a creeping loss of vitality, kind of psychic deadening.
Silencing Eros is like a slow psychological suicide.
In a sense. When the life drive is too rigidly contained, she doesn't just lose out on immediate pleasure, she loses something deeper. Her capacity for radical creativity, her ability to genuinely disrupt patterns in her own life, her raw will to be fully present and alive.
She becomes predictable, manageable, safe.
And culture rewards that quietude, gives her conditional acceptance for being easy to handle.
Let's look at the symptoms, the real-world consequences, not abstract, bodily, psychological.
Okay, the analysis points to things like the woman who struggles with orgasm, not for physical reasons, but because she subconsciously fears the wildness she might unleash in that moment.
Fears losing control. Fears what she might become if she lets go completely.
Exactly. Or the woman who initiates sex primarily out of duty.
Because good partners are supposed to want sex, right?
Right. So the action becomes performative, it serves the relationship structure, the idea of what a healthy relationship looks like, rather than flowing from her own authentic, maybe chaotic inner impulse.
What about the rise in self-identified asexuality?
Now, obviously, that's a genuine and valid identity for many people. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the Freudian question has to be asked. Is it always a simple lack of attraction? Or could it sometimes be a necessary psychological defense? A way to opt out of an attraction that feels too messy, too uncontrollable, too dangerous to the carefully constructed self?
Declaring I'm done with men or I'm asexual could be, for some, a structurally clean escape from the vulnerability and chaos of actually wanting someone.
It's a possibility worth considering within this framework. And this is sometimes amplified by a therapeutic culture that can pathologize intensity itself.
How so?
Any strong, untamed feeling, intense desire, fierce longing, even righteous anger can get labeled as dysregulation.
And the cure is?
Often mindfulness, but mindfulness deployed not just as awareness, but as emotional containment, as a way to smooth out the peaks and valleys, to neutralize the chaotic energy of Eros, rather than understand or channel it.
So dressing Eros in yoga pants and teaching it to breathe calmly.
While perhaps missing the vital message the intensity was trying to deliver. But repression, as Freud famously argued, never really works long-term.
It just postpones things, distorts them.
Exactly. Eros refuses to die quietly. It leaks.
How does it leak?
Through dreams, maybe. Dreams of being chased, consumed, overwhelmed, waking up trembling or aroused with no conscious explanation.
Or through sudden, explosive bursts of rage that seem to come out of nowhere, disconnected from the daily routine.
Yes. Or through those private fantasies you quickly delete from your browser history because they feel wrong or violate the conscious script you're trying to live by.
And when the dam finally breaks, when the repression is momentarily overcome, the return is often intense, maybe even violent or irrational.
Precisely because it was held back and distorted for so long. This is that moment when the woman who spent her whole life being good, safe, healed, in control suddenly snaps.
What does that look like?
Could be anything. Leaving a seemingly perfect life for no reason, having an anonymous, impulsive encounter, screaming something utterly unexpected and true in therapy.
We're just dancing wildly alone in the kitchen at 3 a.m.
Yes, and feeling, maybe for the first time in decades, that pure, untamed, chaotic current of aliveness. That's Eros. Raw, unmanaged, refusing to be sublimated or domesticated any longer.
So the argument is, culture fears female sexuality not because it's inherently immoral,
No, not fundamental.
but because it's fundamentally uncontrollable.
Yes, it's revolutionary in an existential sense. It wants to dissolve boundaries between self and other, between reason and instinct. It melts rigid structures. It resists the core demand of civilization, which is predictability and order.
Which leads us to a really challenging, maybe even disturbing philosophical question.
What he says?
What if civilization, as we've built it with its systems of property, inheritance, power structures, what if it actually requires the symbolic castration of female Eros to function?
Wow, okay. So if we were to truly dismantle that repression, are we risking dismantling the social order that, for better or worse, protects us from total chaos?
It forces us to confront this possibility that maybe every law, every moral code, every definition of identity rests on this silent, often voluntary sacrifice of women's untamed desire.
That every time a woman polices her own want, clamps down on that raw feeling, she's unconsciously reinforcing a 10,000-year-old taboo.
And the taboo isn't really against sex itself, it's against the vulnerability of surrender, against chaos, against the temporary death of the rational, controlling superego.
So where does that leave us?
Yeah.
The focus needs to shift, perhaps. Away from only the external political demands like she doesn't owe you her sexuality, which is absolutely true and necessary,
Right.
towards an internal psychological duty. What does she owe herself?
She owes herself the truth.
What truth?
Yeah, the truth that she wants. That she maybe hungers for chaos sometimes, for intensity, for moments of release from control. The truth that she's been subtly, or not so subtly, rewarded for silencing that core impulse her whole life.
And the goal here isn't necessarily external protest or performance art.
No, it's purely Freudian, almost. Bring the unconscious into consciousness. Where id was, there ego shall be. But you have to acknowledge the id first, in all its messy glory.
So what happens when a woman stops being silent? Not to fit a new ideology, not primarily to fight a power structure, but just to allow the full weight of her authentic, maybe contradictory, untamed feeling to surface.
To be not a symbol or a statement or a soldier in the culture war.
But just a raw, vital, potentially chaotic force.
The repressed is always there, waiting, rising, and maybe it won't be sublimated or managed forever. The countdown continues, perhaps?
So we've spent this deep dive unpacking this central conflict, the deep cultural fear of female desire and the real danger of mistaking this sanitized high-agency control for authentic, maybe even anarchic freedom.
It's a lot to think about.
Definitely. And maybe as you, the listener, reflect on this, consider this last thought. When you feel that pinch of self-shame or that hesitation around your own deepest, perhaps messiest desires, ask yourself, is that really the voice of your own mature, rational, moral code speaking? Or could it be, just maybe, the inherited echo of a very, very old fear. A fear culture placed inside you, maybe the first time someone told you not to sit like that.
Something to mull over. Thank you for diving deep with us into the architecture of the self.
We'll catch you next time.